Hi, everyone. We're back for another episode of the USADA Pitch, and I'm joined today by two special guests. First, I want to welcome Chris Quetant, who is the Director of High Performance Athlete Services for USA Track and Field. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Avery. Glad to be here.
And we work really closely with Chris to make sure that track and field athletes are both well educated and well tested so that we can be confident that a clean Team USA is lining up at competitions around the world. One of the people Chris works with the most at USADA is our Director of Elite Education, Tammy Hanson. Welcome back to another episode, Tammy.
Thanks, Avery. Always a pleasure.
So today we want to dive into how and why USADA and NGBs like USA Track and Field work together ahead of major events, including outdoor championships, which are right around the corner, happening July 31st through August 3rd in Eugene, Oregon. So Chris and Tammy, when it comes to outdoor championships and other big events, where do you all start? When does planning begin?
Yeah, I think planning literally starts at the end of every championship. So for 2025, I think we started right at the end of our championship in 2024, kind of reviewing the process, pros and cons, what worked, what didn't work, how we can further collaborate, how we can improve on some of the processes that we have in our collaboration at our championships. And then specifically with Tammy and her education team, we do have a year-end review that we do every year. So we not only look at our championships, but all the engagements we have throughout the year. And again, like I said, kind of try and review, have a better understanding of how we can collaborate further and what USA Track and Field can do to further the efforts that USADA has on their plate. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that USA Track and Field and USADA both really lean into is collaboration with the Athletes Integrity Unit. So we work with them, collaborate, figure out if they're going to be able to attend and provide some education at the events as well. And whether they are or aren't, we work really closely on messaging, making sure that where we can align and educate the athletes on some of the common things that we're seeing or common questions that the athletes have. Together, the three organizations really do want to work closely together to make sure that we're all moving forward and educating athletes and their support people as well as we can.
Nice. So that's a good segue, Tammy. Can you tell me more about your strategy for educating these groups and how Chris and his team support that process?
Yeah, the USA TF team has just been incredible to work with. So it's really important to start with understanding our audience. So Chris and the team are always in the field, always talking to the athletes. So they really have a good understanding of who might be new to testing, who's kind of been around for a really long time, what common questions or trends they're seeing. So they can set us up to be ready to answer those questions, to be able to jump right in on messaging, and to know what level of detail. So if we're seeing an athlete and it's their first time, we know that they might have a lot more questions. Whereas if it's someone who's been with us for a long time, maybe not so specific or less detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about when you get to the event? What does education look like there?
And again, such a great partner. So they, first of all, ensure that we're ready and ready to be successful at the event. So they ensure that we have a good booth location, get us the credentials that we need to have access, and then they introduce us to anyone that we might need to know or have contact with throughout the event. Obviously, as events always have schedule changes or life happens at the event, they ensure that we're educated and up to date on what we might need to know. And then they're also, again, going kind of back to that messaging piece. If we know that the event is happening in a country where maybe contamination is prevalent or there's maybe stricter rules about what medications can be brought in. We kind of design a little bit of an elevator pitch for the athletes where we're maximizing their time, getting them in and out of a team processing type setting where they come to our table, we give them the quick information that they need. We're there to answer any questions that they might have, and then we send them on their way. So we really strategize on what are the most important messaging components that the athletes need right before going on to maybe a world championship or a even bigger competition. What are those last minute things that they would need to know?
Yeah, for sure. And Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about your team's process during event education?
Yeah, I think Tammy kind of hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we want to make sure we collaborate with all our partners, right? So we collaborate with a lot of organizations, individuals to pull off our championships. Obviously, we have LLCs, we have volunteers, and USADA plays a large role in what we do at our championships, right? So we want to make sure they're set up. Tammy mentioned having full access, credentialing, making sure they have full scope of what our championship looks like, the setup, not only on the field of play, but also, the education opportunity. And Tammy mentioned our team processing. So if you're not familiar, whenever we have a championship and athletes qualify for a particular team, we have a full immersive process where the athlete does everything that they may need for that championship. So that goes from making sure they have their background safe sport credentials kind of up to date, booking travel, connecting and registering with coaches, and then USADA education team plays a large role in that too. So they're one of the required boxes that need to get checked. So it's kind of a mandate that we have all our athletes go through that process. And as they mentioned, not every athlete, depending on their level, how long they've been in the RTP, they might have different levels of questions or engagement. But we want to make sure that there's still that touch point with the education team before they, travel onto this team. And that's the biggest impact I think we kind of set up for the education team is that face-to-face interaction. Tim and I talk about all the time of what are the different ways we can reach out to athletes, how we can engage. And quite honestly, I think team processing and that face-to-face engagement is probably the biggest impact we have. As Tammy mentioned, they're going to kind of potentially a foreign land. The rules might be a little different. So making sure the team is prepared with that information to provide to our athletes plays a huge role. And I think it's a big impact for our athletes.
Yeah,
And I would
that's
just add into
interesting.
that, that's one of the things that's so cool about our collaboration with track and field as well is for a lot of events, USADA, when we have a booth or we have some sort of event education, it might be in like an expo center where people might be passing by and see us and we'll engage in conversations when they have questions. But with the track and field events, we are guaranteed to get to see every single athlete who's going to go to that world championships. And so it's again, just that opportunity for any last minute questions. We want to make sure that every Team USA athlete and every athlete representing USA Track and Field and the US goes there and does that and does really well, and that they know everything that they need to know from a clean sport perspective before they even leave the US. And so our ability collaboratively to do that, the investment that USATF has made into making that a requirement and having us part of team processing has really helped our ability globally to make sure that every athlete that ever attends one of those events has been educated.
Yeah, what an amazing thing to be able to do. So what about testing? Chris, who do you collaborate with? What does that collaboration look like for the event?
Yeah, it's fully immersive, just like what we do for the education team, we do for the testing team as well, right? So, the client services team and the lead DCOs that are assigned to our championships, we collaborate with them. Like I mentioned, as soon as one championship ends, we start talking about what next year looks like. So, over the past couple of months, we've been connecting with our LLCs, connecting with the lead DCOs, talking about what the championship's going to look like. Obviously, the requirements, access, credentials, what the setup is going to be like, how many doping control stations are they going to need? What are the volunteer needs for chaperones, right? That's a huge requirement for the doping control station. So collaborating with the LLC, making sure that the lead DCO is comfortable with the number of volunteers, and to make sure we game plan for, Tammy mentioned before, life happens, right? So we may not always meet all the requirements that, to have a perfect doping control station, but figure it out on the fly and collaborate with those DCOs. So my role and my coworkers' role during a championship, we're kind of the middleman, if you will, right? So the LLC does a lot of the work on the front end to run our championship, and then we have our DCOs that are, post competition that are selecting athletes and going through the doping control process. And I try to make life as easy as possible for those DCOs. So if they're running out of supplies, water, Gatorade, if they're looking for an athlete, if Tay mentioned that the schedule changes, we want to make sure we're communicating that. If they're confused on who an athlete is, right? We have a lot of athletes. We sometimes have 150 to 160 athletes that might qualify for a team. So a lot of faces that they kind of need to know on the fly, especially after competition. So making sure that they have an understanding of who those athletes are. So anything we can do from USATF to make sure that DCOs are comfortable, are prepared, and that they're focused on what they need to do. That's really where we collaborate and make sure that, we're doing everything we can. So.
Yeah, what an awesome group effort. So speaking of the group, Tammy mentioned the Athletics Integrity Unit a little bit earlier, but can you tell us more about the collaboration that happens with that group and what more does that look like?
For sure. So we have very similar engagements with the AIU, just like we do with USADA. Obviously, being kind of the anti-doping agency for our international federation, and obviously there's some anti-doping compliance Rule 15 that, as a member federation, we need to stay in compliance with. So from a regulation standpoint, required to meet certain standards throughout the year, whether it be education, a testing pool, communicate our long list for certain championships, things like that. We just have to kind of engage with AIU, but there's also some proactive collaboration. So the AIU will also be at our championship. They've been there for the past probably 2 seasons now. I think they've realized the impact that you guys have at our championship, so they also want to collaborate on that front as well. So there's a high level of proactive collaboration with AIU, just like we do at USADA, and that continues to grow. And I think between the three organizations, USADA, USA Track and Field, AIU, we've kind of built a good system of communication to be able to understand what that message should be out to athletes and make sure we're all on the same page when we are communicating rules, regulations, anything like that to athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tammy, can you talk a little bit more about when testing starts and what is the process around ratifying records? Because that's obviously something that could happen at these big events.
Yeah, absolutely. So agencies like USADA are allowed to test athletes before, during, and after competition. So to make sure that we're testing at the right times, we often team up with national governing bodies to really keep us up to date on those competition schedules, start lists, registrations, training information, and anything else that would help us know when and how and who to test. Chris mentioned 160 athletes. We've even run into situations where sometimes they have the same name. So really working through and collaborating to make sure we're identifying the right athlete at the right time is imperative. Also important to know that in competition period usually starts at 11:59 the night before any event. So that's also why we're paying really close attention to timing for that particular athlete's event, so that we can apply the right prohibited list and really just make sure that everything is fair and accurate for that athlete that we're testing. And then when it comes to ratifying records, so some people might be surprised to find out that anytime a record is hit, they do have to have a test, an anti-doping sample collection test in order to ratify that record. So as soon as that happens, we are collaborating really closely with USA Track and Field to make sure that we can get that test completed to ensure for the athlete's sake that they are able to uphold that record.
Yeah, to follow up on that, there's, as you can imagine, it can be kind of tricky. You never really know when a world or national record is going to happen. So from our front, we try to make sure we're tracking athletes. We kind of have an understanding where they are throughout the season. So if at certain times of the year, we kind of have an understanding of when an athlete is maybe trending to break a record, we might communicate that to USADA. And if it happens out of nowhere, sometimes we do get those communications, morning, noon, and night, we'll get those calls. So we'll try to proactively work with USADA. And if it's myself, my coworker, or sometimes the athlete reached out to USADA through their hotline to make sure they set up doping control. Obviously, from a member federation standpoint, there's a lot of additional requirements when we talk about ratifying record, but I think the first step is them having that test completed. So again, the collaboration that we have with USADA plays a large role in our ability to communicate when those things happen, making sure we have understanding of our sport and some of the requirements that go with those records. So I'm grateful of the collaboration and the partnership we have USADA, because quite honestly, in the end, we're all here for the athletes, and anything we can do to make that process even easier is just, I think it's a win for us. So we appreciate the collaboration on USADA's end.
Well said, Chris, and we appreciate it as well. All right, everyone, I think that is going to do it for today. We pulled back the curtain a bit on education and testing for major events, and you can always find more information on usada.org. Tammy and Chris, thank you so much to you both for being here.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Chris.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And watch out for more episodes of the USADA Pitch.